Let's bring in friend of Donald Trump, former Democratic Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich. You'll remember Governor Blagojevich was tried and convicted and sentenced to a 14-year prison sentence that was commuted by the former president in 2020. The governor then started calling himself a Trumpocrat, and we welcome him now. Gov, thanks for joining us again.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
You think he announces?
Oh, absolutely, yes. President Trump is he's a tough guy. He's a fighter. He's a real competitor. He plays to win, and he has something in politics. He has something, Chris, that most politicians don't have. And you know what that is?
Nope.
It's testicular virility. So he's going to go out there to try to defy the odds. He's trying to be the second president in American history to have won 2 non-consecutive terms. The last one and the only one to do that was Grover Cleveland, who ran in 1884 and won. Ran again in 1888 and lost, then came back in 1892 and won again. And he was a governor of New York, something that you know something about.
Right. I understand. But you got your testicular virility versus your brains, and discretion being the better part of valor. Not run or don't run, but timing. If you had the chessboard that he has right now coming out of the midterms, is tonight the night that you would announce something like this, given the state of play in the media and in his own party?
Well, that's a good question. I'm surprised that he's doing it this soon after the midterm elections, before the holidays. It's very unusual. It's unprecedented. And yet Donald Trump does a lot of unprecedented things. If I were advising him, his announcement tonight, I would encourage him to remember what Winston Churchill said, and that is, if we open up a quarrel between the present and the past, we risk losing the future. I think he should leave the last election behind and talk about what he wants to do for the American people in a second term. I think he should draw a contrast between his administration and his accomplishments, how the economy was when he was president, how it is now under Biden. Ukraine was an independent country when he was president. Russia stayed where it was. They haven't since then. I think if he draws those comparisons, that would be good. And then I think he has to, and this is a difficult thing because he's got his own style, but I would like to see him be a little more Ronald Reagan and a little less Donald Trump, a little less combative and a little more gentle. I think it would be very helpful if he would be more of a unifier, and that's a big ask, I think, because he's such a fighter.
Yeah, but so are you. So am I. A lot of guys are fighters. It's about how you fight and with whom you fight. And I think that sometimes the former president gets too much credit for doing things that other people wouldn't do for good reason. And that's to your point, which is after what just happened in the midterms, which was largely independent voters, and more people becoming independent voters, punishing in any toss-up race anything other than a conservative stronghold, people who denied the reality of the last election. Do you think that that got through to the former president and will keep him from saying, it was rigged, I won last time?
I can't predict that. I'm afraid that he probably won't. However, I will say, if the Republicans who are encouraging Trump to not run this time, or discouraging him from running, and are blaming him for this election when they didn't meet up to the expectations that they were the ones who were advocating, and I bought into it, frankly. I was just as wrong in this election as I've been in many others. But they ought to blame the Supreme Court, because I think that outcome, the way it ended, was because of the decision to take away the reproductive freedoms of women. And I think women came out in all kinds of numbers and all kinds of places to express their fury at the idea that politicians and government can interfere with their reproductive freedoms.
Yeah, you know, I think I heard you say many years ago, and certainly other Democrats did, that conservatives, Republicans have to be careful about Roe v. Wade. It's a little bit of the situation of, do you want to be the dog who caught the car? And it was great to talk about how wrong that decision was, and the right to life and all these other tropes and political angles on it. But when you actually overturned it, did they wind up kicking a hornet's nest with people who care about reproductive rights, not just women, but their allies? Let me ask you, if he decides to run, are you with him?
Well, of course, and I can't be unbiased, because look what he did for me. And I appreciate your opening, but I want to say again to the people who are listening, I didn't break a law, cross a line, or take a penny. It was all routine political conversations. They put me in prison for that. I'd still be there if it wasn't for Donald Trump, a Republican president who reached in to rescue a Democrat governor, the first one who endorsed President Obama for his election. And he didn't have to do that, but he saw something that was wrong, and he put a stop to it. How could I not be for him? I'm rooting for him on a very personal level.
Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of NewsNation's fact-driven coverage.